Okay, sweet. So I guess that'll just include like what's your name, what year and program are you in, and where you have most recently and previously worked at. So I guess Raheel, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, for sure. Hi everyone, my name is Rahil. I last year finished my third year of CS, and in my 3 years at uni, I was a part of DeltaHacks all 3 years, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. I'm just happy to be back and happy to help as much as I can. On the work side, this past summer, I completed an internship at Twitch. Right now, I'm currently working at Robinhood. So I've been going back and forth from America multiple times throughout this semester to complete work. And then next summer, I'll be working at Facebook and I'll be working on Instagram. So yeah, happy to be back, happy to be here. And I'm just excited for this event.
Okay, lovely. Michelle, you're up next.
Awesome. So hey everybody, I'm Michelle and I just completed my third year of software engineering and management at Mcmaster. I'm currently on co-op right now at Tesla for 8 months. And then this past summer, I was on co-op at Microsoft. So I'm excited to be here and I look forward to roasting some resumes.
Anand?
Hi everyone, my name's Anand. I'm currently in 4th year of computer science here at Mac. This summer I was working at Microsoft for an internship, and before that I have worked at RBC and Microsoft. RBC and CIBC. Yeah. I'm looking forward to roasting your resumes today.
All right, Jason, you want to keep on going?
Sure. So hi everyone, my name is Jason. I graduated from CS this year. I've done 2 internships, one at IBM for 16 months and then another 3-month one at Salesforce. And yeah, hopefully you guys are able to take something away from this, and yeah, feel free to reach out.
Okay, sweet. Kajaban, you're up next.
Hey everybody, so my name is Kajoban. I recently graduated this May from Mcmaster Software Engineering and Management program. During undergrad, I was part of the DeltaHacks team for 3 years, so I really missed the team, but I'm glad I'm able to come back to this event. In terms of co-ops, during undergrad, I did 3 co-ops and 1 research assistantship. One of the more notable co-ops I did was at Willow Tree Apps, which is a development agency in Charlottesville, Virginia. And all of my co-ops are on the front end side. Now I currently work at Essence, which is the luxury clothing brand retailer, as a software developer. And I'm now on the backend side. And I'm currently in the warehouse domain, so building out microservices that power our warehouse operations. So that's a bit about me.
Okay, sweet. Alman, do you want to keep going?
Yep, sounds good. Hello, everyone. My name is Alman, and I am the VP Events for DeltaHacks this year. I am also in my 4th year software engineering and management, and I'm currently on co-op, and I'm working at Red Hat Canada.
Okay, perfect. Jennifer, do you want to kind of finish off our introduction stage?
Hello, my name is Jennifer. I'm part of the events team and I'm in my final year of computer science. Previously, I worked at IBM and Morgan Stanley, and I'm looking forward to roasting your resumes today.
Okay, sweet. But before we actually go into critiquing, I'm going to go over some of the most common things that you can do to create a strong resume. So Karan, would you like to move on to the next slide? So the first thing is that you'll notice is be concise. Keep your resume to 1 page. It's that simple, but you can move up to 2 pages once you have 10 years of relevant work experience. And in terms of font size, you'll want to have a size 11 to 12 for regular text, such as the bullet points you'd normally include in your experience section or leadership experience, and perhaps 16 for big titles. However, overall, it's somewhat subjective, but you should honestly aim to have them big enough to stand out, but to a point where they shouldn't draw any attention away from your actual from the content of your resume, as that hurts you in the end. And in terms of the number of bullet points, you should have around 2 to 3 bullet points minimum, just to highlight your experience, what you did, how you did it, and the accomplishments of that experience, and then a maximum of 5 per experience. So Karan, you want to move on to the next one? And then in terms of formatting, you want to have a consistent formatting. So for example, the start month of, say, a position, and you choose to do a three-letter abbreviation for the month. So for example, September turns into Sep and so forth. So you want to have that consistent throughout, and as well as you should honestly have your months represented as names rather than numbers. So for example, instead of 09 for September, you should just have it as September, because it's easier for recruiters and others to understand your timeline, when you started and how long you've been there. And moving on to bolding, and when you actually want to bold, you should honestly think, if I'm in doubt, do not bold unless you're 100% certain. And if you do choose to bold only one thing per bullet point. And for example, some things you can bold are skills such as Python, or results such as reduced load time for a website by X%. And when you do bold that skill, ensure you bold enough to give context, but also limit yourself in the process so you don't overclutter things. So in the example above, you wouldn't only bold just X%, because that doesn't actually give any context to what you did. Instead, you'd bold the entire text saying reduce load time by 10%, as that gives concrete evidence of what you did and what the achievement of that was. So I guess on to the next one, Karan. And then this is obviously the subjective, to color or not to color. I was in the same boat myself, but overall, I've just learned that this is a subjective topic. And in order for you to make the right decision, experiment with your resume. So what does that look like? That looks like adding colors, removing colors, applying with the colored resume and the black and white resume. But overall, these are just the things I've learned from talking to the panelists over the last week. So if you're in doubt, just stick to black and white. It simply works. However, I talked to Raheel earlier, and he says that if you're applying for a product design position, it's in your best interest to add color. However, if the color does take away from the content and it takes away attention, then it hurts you in the end. And it's also a hit or miss. But if it hits, it's very effective when it does. But in terms of actually choosing colors, make sure they're readable. So avoid yellow, bright red, and overall pale colors that do make your resume look very faded and bland. I guess on to the next one, Karan. So I guess this is what you don't want to do in a resume. So avoid broken links. What you can do, double, triple check them. It's that simple. Just make sure they work. Having broken links leaves a bad vibe to your resume. Every recruiter wants to see your GitHub or perhaps resume link, or not resume link, but LinkedIn. Leave unnecessary info out, such as marital status or home address. Those things are simply not relevant anymore. Same with the generic skills section. So omit Microsoft Office entirely, VS Code, and Word. You're applying for a software engineering position. These are probably some of the most basic skills that likely everyone has around you, as well as don't rate your own skills. So avoid using proficient, intermediate, or beginner, or any sort of bar graphs to rate your skills. But instead, you should honestly list your skills in descending proficiency. So for instance, from most proficient to least proficient. And if you do list a skill on your resume, just know that it's fair game during an interview. This was said by a Tesla recruiter at a Tesla resume roast event. And she specifically said that as candidates have overstated their skills. So I guess let's go on to the next one, Karan. So I guess more resume details. So you may have heard of this, but it's basically a system that many companies do use. I believe almost all Fortune 500 companies do implement this one way or another. And it's just ATS, which simply stands for Applicant Tracking System. And it simply parses through resumes and autofills information such as skills, work experience, education, and it does that by looking at keywords. And so talking to the panelists, I've asked them, how do you beat the ATS system? And it's not as hard as you might think. For instance, don't use a 2-column resume. It's just notorious for parsing poorly, and it'll hurt you in the end, as it can't accurately display sort of the experience that you did or some of the skills, as it might get jumbled up. We've included actually a simple template, which I'll be linking at the very end, or you can use bit.ly/ATS resume. It was actually recommended by the panelists here, as it parses exceptionally well. And one more tip that was given by the panelists was have 2 versions of your resume. One is the ATS resume, which is simply for online applications. And the whole purpose of it is just to parse well and get your foot through the front door. And then afterwards, it's the coffee chat resume. So for instance, if you're at a hackathon and you somehow meet a recruiter and you want to have a chat and show them your resume, you will have this one that looks very nice, very neat, and very organized as well for you actually meet them. So that'll be the main purpose for the coffee chat resume. So it's best to have two. Yeah, Karan, I guess on to the next one. Yeah, and so for actual resume structure, if you're a current student or a new grad, you want to have your education at the very top of your resume. And this is because recruiters need to know this for intern roles. So that is just a requirement for them to hire you. Be sure to include your graduating year and month, as there are graduating time requirements. So for instance, I was looking at various positions, and one of them included you have to have at least one semester after your internship to be eligible to intern at said company. So it's important for recruiters to know this sort of information, whether or not you're eligible, and so that you also don't waste your time trying to follow up and then realizing in the end that, oh, hey, look, I can't intern at X company because of X rules. And then next comes skills. So you usually list them from technical languages to technologies to frameworks to spoken language. And the asterisk just means if they're applicable. So depending on how much you know and how well you know it, you can include technologies and frameworks and spoken languages. However, these also use up space that you may need to conserve. So if you do need to conserve space, you can always crunch in technologies and frameworks into one section, which will be called tools and frameworks. And then afterwards, you would include work experience. And of course, if that's obviously relevant. Karan, next slide. And then if you don't have any work experience, you can always add projects. You should get as many projects done as possible if you don't have work experience, as that's gonna be what highlights your actual experience and makes up for it. So you can include things such as school, hackathon, or personal projects. But word of advice, if you do include something, make sure that you can genuinely talk about it, as it's also fair game during interviews. What's also fair game during interviews is leadership experience. So for instance, clubs, extracurriculars, and so forth. You can include non-technical clubs, but word of advice, don't sacrifice a technical club for a non-technical club. So what do I mean by that? Say for instance, you're part of the competitive programming club at Mcmaster. Don't sacrifice that for a cooking club in a minute. Balance is key, of course, and recruiters do want to hire well-rounded candidates, as that's who they're going to be working with for a very long time, upwards of 4 months, 8 months, and so forth. Yeah, moving on to the next one, Karan. Yeah, and so now for the actual resume rows. So we're going to be showing, I believe, 6 resumes, and panelists are going to go over each of them. So Karan, would you like to switch over to the Miro slide? So Raheel, looks like this is yours.
Yep. Let me get on the Miro slide as well so I can do that. Yeah, so first of all, this resume overall, very well done. I wrote the comment here, like pretty much checked every box. Other like little things are very subjective, and it really depends on who's reviewing your resume, but I've obviously made some little small comments that I found throughout. So the first thing I wrote is for the highlight section. This section is oftentimes like a hit or miss. Some resumes have this, some don't. And sometimes it does take away the space for which you can put more important stuff. But it's really subjective, and something that if it's not working, then you would replace it. And if it is, then keep it up. This made me smile when I was going through this. Experience in Googling is the first time I've seen this. Obviously, it's subtle humor, but it can be misunderstood depending on who's reviewing it or whatnot. So definitely you're taking your chances with that. The next section, skills.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Karan, can you just quickly click on the comments as Raheel's doing it?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so for languages, you don't really need to bold like we presented. try to have your skills from most proficient to least proficient, and it's just not necessary to bold there. Yeah, put them most proficient, and same with the tools. You don't need to bold, just put them from most proficient to least proficient. And then experience. Overall, this was like a very well done section as well. A big hackathon, Canada's largest hackathon. It says Toronto, Ontario, so I was assuming it's U of T, but the largest hackathon is Hack the North. So maybe you can maybe write one of Canada's largest hackathons, but that's like totally up to you, just a small granular thing. But otherwise, well done with that. And then here for configured, just the word wrapping, I would try to put the word on one line and not have a wrap. It would just make the reading easier, because recruiters has what, 6, 8, 15 seconds when they're going through a resume, and it just makes everything easier to read and stuff. And then here, city services by 100%. You've repeated this here and on the top in the highlights. So if you were to repeat it, it's okay, but I don't think you have to bold it twice. Is this extra bolding? Next, project section was done really well too. It's to the point, shows what exactly you did, and it also has numbers to show what exactly you were able to accomplish. And then lastly, education. If it's a prominent university, I would probably put it higher up on the resume, especially because that can help. And especially if it's a prominent, I wouldn't prefer to keep it at the bottom, because that's something I would want to highlight as well. And the last thing I wrote, if this resume is not getting interviews, which it should, and I think it is working, just edit little things like do less bolding, try one without bolding, or try one without the highlight section, or just try a different format. But overall, like, it's a very well done resume. So yeah, good job.
Okay, lovely. Does anyone else have anything to chime in on this resume? Any pet peeves, anything that stands out to them? I guess Alman, Michelle, Hanan, you guys have anything on this one before we move on to the next one? No? Okay, I guess Michelle, you're up next.
Awesome. So I'll be reviewing this resume shown here. So I guess, Karan, if you want to zoom in a little bit, just so our attendees can maybe see some of the bullets that are written. We can go through from the top to the bottom. Perfect. Maybe like one more plus to zoom in a little closer. Awesome. That's perfect. Okay. So first of all, just some general things that I've noticed. I really like the format, and I've noticed that whoever wrote this resume definitely followed one that's ATS friendly. So they have the education, work experience, projects, and all their skills. So that's definitely great for parsing purposes. And in terms of the, I guess, priorities, so having education on top, I think is very useful. And kind of like Rahil said, the other one had a highlight section, which personally I wouldn't recommend, because I feel like that's space that could be used by hopefully experience or some of your skills. So I do like that this resume also doesn't have that section here. So looking at some more specific comments, Karan, if you want to click, I guess just the first one. So the first thing I noticed is that with the work experience and project bullets, for example, they're all bullet point form, but for here under education, they're written in sentences and they're pretty spaced out. So something that I'd recommend, just a formatting thing, is that I would also make those 2 bullet points instead of 2 separate sentences. And then if you want to click the one to the right. Yeah, so here as well, you mentioned achievement and expectations, but throughout the resume, you've typed out and you have the symbol and. Also, I think it'd be better to just type and instead of the symbol. Again, more of a smaller thing, but something that I thought was worth mentioning. Okay, and then work experience. So I think this was a good thing, yeah. So I like that each experience has about 3 to 4 bullet points, as Zenya mentioned. That's good to have. And then the one next to it, That one there, yeah. So because recruiters have such a short amount of time to look through your resume, they might glance at it for like 8 to 15 seconds. It's definitely important to highlight the major things for each of your experiences. So something that this person did really, really well is that they highlighted, so they bolded numbers that were important, and they made sure to state their results. So something that's super important is to state your results earlier on in the bullet, just so as recruiters are glancing through it quickly, when they look at the very start of the bullet, they see that result before a bunch of wording, so they don't have to skim through it and they'll actually see it. Because otherwise, they might look through, see a bunch of wording, not want to look at it, and then they don't actually see what you achieved. So something that was good was the use of numerics. But as you can see with the next comments, the end-to-end localization process. Yeah, so I like that the numerics were highlighted, but I don't think I would bold this line in particular, because I think with bolding, you only want to bold what's important and impactful. So your impact, your results, your numerics, I would definitely highlight. But when you're explaining what was actually done, I wouldn't recommend bolding, just because you don't want to over bold, because it takes away from the importance of the numerics that are actually bolded. And then the next point, yeah, again, using the word "and" instead of the symbol. You might see a couple of those in these comments. And then the next bullet, so yeah, again with the one above, so that doesn't relate to this bullet, but where you said achieved 94% test coverage, I really, really like that achieved and that numeric is right at the beginning, because it will be seen by the recruiter right away as they quickly glance to your resume. So the next one, sorry, that one, just italicizing. I noticed that you italicized all your technologies that you've used. And if you want to keep that up in terms of the resume, that's a format that you want to follow. It might be worth also italicizing these, because these are technologies or systems that are used in topics that you taught. So that might be good to follow. And then going to projects. Awesome. So something that was also well done. I feel like I have a lot of benefits about this resume rather than roasting, but we'll get to some more roasting. I really like that the embedded links are there and that there is a visual cue for it. So you have the little icon there with the link to show that it is clickable, which is something that I think a lot of resumes lack. So if you guys ever do embed links, first of all, make sure they work and review it a few times, because sometimes your website might be updated or links might be updated. And they'll no longer work on your resume. So first of all, check that that works, and then make sure that it somehow, there's a visual cue so the user knows they can click on it. I really like that the technologies were listed next to the projects. So that one there, it's super useful and it's great for parsing because you have those keywords on your resume. And then again, with collaboratively plan and share trips, I think there's no need to bold it again, because you want to bold the most important things. And I feel like that might not be one of the key items in that bullet. So continuing on, constructed, yep, reduce trips, search times by that, utilize Heroku and GitHub. So again, with the and then your next project, so developed a hyper casual endless game to the Android and Windows platforms. I know you want to italicize some of your technologies. It's really up to you in this case, but I feel like Android and Windows don't fit in as well as some of the other things that were italicized. So I personally wouldn't, especially because you have a bolding right next to it. And I feel like it's a little much going on visually that it might confuse the recruiter if they're just glancing at it. So I might recommend unitalicizing that. And then created an engaging and rewarding user experience by constructing data, I would recommend moving that numeric to the beginning. So instead of saying created this blah, 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 by doing this, I would say constructed 25 achievements and 20 plus stats to create an engaging blah, 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 blah. So having those numbers in the beginning, those results in the beginning, and then like your explanation, it just might make it flow a little better and stand out a little better, so they don't have to search through your bullet to kind of find those numerics. And then next, slash the performance impact. This is just more of a grammar thing. So where you say development of the pooling system for deactivated objects and I don't think you need a comment there. It doesn't really make sense to pause because you're saying this and this. So just remove that comma. And then leadership and extracurriculars. So this one's good. Something that I've noticed, so with your experiences above, you put the company, and then underneath you put your position. Again, for format, if you're quickly glancing at it, it's nice to maintain a specific format. So maybe putting the club or the company or the organization first and then your position. So just swapping those two is what I'd recommend. And then looking the next comment. Yeah, that one. Again, that's just an and comment. So we can go to the next one. Again, here, something with the numerics. So you said managed HR, address the needs and concerns of 30 plus interns in Canada. I would say address the concerns of 30 plus interns in Canada by managing HR, Again, putting that in the beginning. Awesome. And then licensing with C-level executives and other engagement leaders. I'd recommend removing that bolding. And then finally, your last leadership and extracurricular. So yeah, put awarded before first bullet. So if you read these bullets, the people, so they mentioned that they built highly adaptive algorithm with Python and Java, which is great. You're explaining what you're doing. I feel like the awarded, I think it was $1,000 cash prize. I might put that before the first bullet that you have there. So I just feel like it's more important, so I move it up. But if any of the other roasters have opinions on that too, let me know. It's just personally, I would swap those two bullets that you have there. And then last but not least, the skills section. I love how it's nicely listed. You don't have those bar graphs or explaining your proficiencies. Something that you do want to know again is how well do you know all these skills? Because like Xenia said, everything is fair game during an interview. So if you're not that confident, SQL, but actually SQL is a good one to have. I take that back. But if you're not that confident in some of those technologies and you wouldn't feel comfortable answering questions related to it, I wouldn't put them on. But they are really good for parsers. So what I'd recommend is maybe catering these skills and technologies specific to job postings. And yeah, so that's my last comment. Overall, I think it's a great resume. It's really well formatted, and all of the bullet points had they followed the structure, which is basically saying what were you doing, what was your impact, and what was the result. So you followed that very well. It's just a couple small things that I noted. But yeah, does anyone else have anything to add? Any of the other roasters?
Yeah, I'd just like to say this resume looks very good. It's very well done. I personally feel that skills should go on top of work experience. There should be education skills, work experience, project leadership. But it all depends on personal preference too. So this works. It's clearly working. They have work experience. But that's just my opinion. That skills should go on top.
All right. Anyone else like to chime in before we move on to Anand's resume? No? Okay. I guess Anand, you're up next, man.
All right. Yeah, so I'd like to start by saying that this resume is also very well done. It has also followed the pages of the book of good resumes because it has everything in the right order and it does a lot of stuff very well. So the first comment I have is for the US citizen on top. So that is not required. If the job pertains to, if it is a US-based position or if it's required, they'll ask in the application. I think it should not be there. For the next point, it is the technical skills. So just arrange them in the order of proficiency. If this is the order you're proficient in, that's great. If not, just redo it, arrange it in the orders. Then the next one is for the software development intern position. So this one's missing the impact that you had at the position and the tools that you used. So maybe add some more points saying what exactly was done with what tools and what impact it had. So have some numbers related to that because that is how your position should be listed on your resume. It should have what you did, the tools you used, and the impact you had. And the impact should usually have some numericals in it to kind of attract the recruiter. For the next point, it's related to the dates. So some dates are like June is written in the full string June, and then August is abbreviated. So try to keep the same format. If you're abbreviating, then abbreviate everything, and if you're not, then just write the whole string. So consistency is a little important. Yeah, and the next point is for the last project, it's missing the bolding or the highlight. So it would be nice to have some numericals or some impact what that project had. Otherwise, it's a very good resume. Just one last thing I would like to point out is that your resume should work if it is printed out in black and white, because it sometimes happens. And if the highlighting in this resume is done in colors, so that might not work really well when it's printed out in black and white. So some banks, they print out stacks of resumes, they print it out in black and white, and then they just go through it manually. Some recruiters still do it. So yeah, that's one more point I would like to add, that make sure your resume kind of works out in black and white too. But apart from that, it's very well done. It has all the good ingredients that a good resume should have. Yeah, and then that's all the points from my side.
Okay. I noticed the US is in common. So Raheel, I know you worked in the States. So how valuable is it for someone applying to be a US citizen? Do companies, how many of them would sponsor a visa, work visa?
It really depends on the company, but the companies typically ask, they have like these three questions, like, are you eligible to work in America? Are you authorized? And would you need a visa? So that's already all asked in the application. And that's if they're going to sponsor and if the position is for America. So it would be in the application. You don't need to include it in the resume. It's just extra text that's not required.
Okay, perfect. Because I know a lot of people perhaps don't have US citizenship. So I know a lot of people may be curious about including such information.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Okay, perfect. I guess if anyone else has anything to chime in, I guess do so right now. Otherwise, I guess, Jason, you're up next.
Cool. Okay, so in terms of this resume overall, I think it's pretty well organized. But a couple of things that I've noted down at the top, you have so the 2-column resume. So I think this was mentioned earlier in the slideshow. I think, like, honestly, I had a 2-column resume for a while and I didn't have any issues. So it's honestly personal choice, but what I would do is I would go to like an online ATS parser and put this resume through it and see if it parses well. If it doesn't, I would consider switching or refactoring it into a 1-column resume, because that is easily parsable. The second thing is highlights of qualifications. So I think Rahil kind of brought this up, that like, it's a hit or miss. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think in this case, it doesn't really help this person, because a lot of their points that they're mentioning here, they're really restating it again, like later on. So their first point is, they're in 2nd year of this program, but in their education, they've stated that again. And then the skills they've mentioned, they're obviously restating it again later on. So I think in this case, this highlights of qualifications isn't necessary, and you should probably use that space to maybe elaborate on your projects more, add more projects, or any other experiences you may have. The third thing here was education. So I see here that you included some of your marks that you got in some of your classes, which is good. But I would also include like your overall GPA if it's above 3.0. And then another thing was expected grad date. So expected grad date is very important when you're applying, especially for like internships, because companies want to know when you're graduating, because ultimately, you come in as an intern, but they would most likely want to bring you on full time. So make sure you include like your expected graduation date. And then the point after that, we have, so the high school section. So I think this person is in 2nd year now. So as you get past first year, as you get into your second year, third year, you should reduce the amount of space you give your high school points. So this person, like, it's fine to include like your high school and like maybe a list of 1 or 2 courses you've taken, but again, like, you should probably, rather than saying, hey, in this course, like, I learned this, maybe talk about a project and add it under the project section that you did in that course and talk about it. I think that would look better. So that was that point. And then the next point I have here is for projects. So the projects, I feel like this person kind of combined multiple points. So it looks kind of wordy. I would rather that they split it up into 2 points. So for the first project, you could just split it. So it says, you know, used interactive labs and Raspberry Pi to simulate a virtual environment. So that's 1 point. And the next point will be develop Python code to, you know, so on and so forth. And then same thing for the second project. And then in the second column here, key skills. So yeah, I think Anant mentioned this about having colored resume. I think having color on a resume is fine, but you have to make sure that it looks okay when you print it out black and white, because that's what a lot of companies do. So I think in this case it wouldn't look that good. So you might want to reconsider having kind of like a darker background. Skills, just another small thing here. Try to lower, just to be consistent. Consistency is pretty key to a resume. So just lowercase all of these skills. And then the last thing I have here is extracurricular. So this one, another small thing, just change the position of the date and kind of like the position and like where you worked. Because right now it looks like the name of the position is January 2021. Like it should just be swapped. Like your position and where you worked is more important than the date, right? So yeah, that was another small thing. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's about it. Yeah, overall, a pretty good resume, just needs a bit of refactoring. But yeah, if anybody wants to add anything, go for it.
I would actually like to add something in. I'd say for your extracurriculars, you should say how long you did them for, because I see in your education or even in your Ontario, high school education, you said how long it was. You should include how long those extracurriculars were as well. And you should probably abbreviate them to four letters, I guess. Or yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or 3 if JNU is a bit awkward. I think 3 letters are always the way to go, though.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point.
Does anyone else have anything to add? If not, then we can move on to Jennifer.
Okay, hello. Karan, if you could just scroll and zoom in so that the people can read it. And then let me do the same on my screen. So yeah, that looks good. All right, so starting from the very top point, so I think you should see my cursor, right? Yeah, top point. Sorry, I wrote paragraphs, but I personally do not like this template because your headers are in the middle and then you sort of write your bullet points on the left. So when someone's reading this, and remember, a recruiter only has 8 to 10 seconds to look at your resume, it's a bit difficult for them to look in the middle, then look over to the left and look in the middle, look over to the left again. So I highly recommend using a template that's similar to what the other people have used, where everything is aligned in one direction. And that way you can sort of just like look, you can glance up to down and not have to move your eyes too far from anywhere. So that's just one comment that I had about that. And then I have a comment over here as well, is that I don't think it's necessary to put these titles here because anyone can say that they're a quick learner. If you're applying for software development roles, they assume that you're a programmer already, and it's already stated that you're a computer science student. So I don't think this is necessary. Instead, what I would do is I would take that extra space and make your name a bit bigger so that it stands out more on your resume. Next one is up here. So highlights of qualifications. Like others have said, like Jason and Rahil, I think you don't need highlight of qualifications because your resume should be able to speak for itself based off like the bullet points that you have for your experience, for your education and stuff like that. So I think that you could take the space and elaborate on bullet points elsewhere instead. But I also think that this highlights of qualifications is a bit too long. So if you do really like the idea of having highlights of qualifications, I think you should try to limit it to one, 2, or 3 bullet points that really highlight like your skills. When you have more than 3, it just shows that you have just too much for the recruiter to read, and it doesn't really highlight anything. It's more so that you're just putting a bunch of text on there and hoping that they'll bite. So yeah, I recommend getting rid of it or at least making it shorter. And then I think for this comment here, I just said PowerShell. Yeah, like just capitalization, not a huge deal, but you should try to, if it needs to be capitalized properly, make sure you have the proper spelling and capitalization. And then I think, okay, so there's a bullet point here as well for the highlights of qualifications, which says that there's a strong eye for identifying and resolving problems with viable solutions. I think this is a really good point, but instead of saying this in your highlights of qualifications, I think you should have a, let's say a project or your work experience or whatever, and make sure that your bullet points really demonstrate that you did what you said. So your bullet points demonstrate that you identified and resolved problems with viable solutions, and that you're a leader, and that you're a team person who was, I guess, working well with their team. So instead of saying this as a sentence here, you should really show that you actually did it within your bullet points for one of your projects or experiences. Next is in the technical skills and abilities. So for this one is, right, so your skills should be listed in most proficient to least proficient. So if this is already done like that, then great. If not, make sure you make it most proficient to least proficient. And then the point beside that is that you mentioned having C and C#. I'm assuming this is already in most proficient to least proficient. So you have C and C# as like your second and third most proficient skill. But when I was looking through this resume, I didn't actually see any mention of a technical project or any work experience involving C or C#. So I recommend you either move it down the list in proficiency, or find a project that you did that used C and C# and put that on your resume to show that you actually have worked with this language. And then this point over here is certifications. I don't think first aid or WMIS are important, so I think you should leave that off, just so you have more room for other stuff. Okay, moving on to education. Small thing here is just it should be honors, not honor, I believe. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's honors. And then here is I would just say GPA colon, and then you put your GPA there instead of saying achieve the cumulative GPA, just because it's easier for a recruiter to scan it and see it immediately rather than having to read a whole sentence. So like Michelle said, you put the numbers early in your bullet point so that they can see it as fast as possible. Okay, and also a point in the advanced diploma part, I would get rid of the transfer to X university at the end of first year because your resume already says that. So this is just a bullet point that you don't really need. You should get rid of it and to make room for other bullet points. And all right, that's all for education. Other than that, I think the education section is good. Like I like the formatting of like the dates and stuff like that. And I like that you include your GPA because I think it's pretty good. Like some people mentioned, if your GPA is above a certain threshold, which I would consider like 3.5, that's good to put on your resume. All right, so in project experience and milestones, this is absolutely not mandatory, but if you have any links, you should probably include them in your resume. So, but if you don't have any links, like they're all private, that's not going to hurt you too much. It's just if you do, it's nice to have them there. And then for the shopping website, oh yes, so your dates are a bit inconsistent here. So over here, you can see that it's all in capitals over here, April 2020. But then in the checkers one, it says December 2020 in lowercase. So I think that you should change them to be consistent between all three of them. And I also think that if you can, it might be better to move your dates over to the right side, like your other parts. So like similar to your education or extracurricular activities, I think you should move your dates over to the right side. And then after the pipe, you should put your tech stack there to show that you've worked with these technologies on your project. And the next point is, so in one of the bullet points here, I think that some of these bullet points could be worded a bit differently, as in, for example, this bullet point, when I read it, I felt like I didn't really understand what exactly you were doing. So I don't know like what processes or tasks or functional procedures that you're talking about. So it's sort of just not saying much while still taking up room on your resume. So in my opinion, you either make this more specific. So I don't know your project exactly, but you should try to think of like a specific task you worked on or a specific functional procedure, and then highlight how you coordinate this with your team or with yourself or whatever. And just make it more descriptive. And I think something similar here in this bullet point is that you should be more specific with your goals. And I think you also don't need to use so many, I guess, like flowery words, because it starts getting a bit difficult to read after a certain point, where if I read the sentence, it takes me a little bit of time to think about what this actually means. And the recruiter doesn't have that time to really digest what you're trying to say. So I think try to make your bullet points simple. Okay, and then the next one in checkers here, a minor thing here is I would say you should say create a checkers game using Python or with Python, because I think on Python doesn't make a lot of sense. But otherwise, this sounds pretty good. And then for the Twitterverse one, I don't like the usage of the word successfully here, because any project that you put on here is implied to be successful. And if you say successfully here, it sounds like your other projects aren't successful. So I would just get rid of that word and just say created. And then the next one here is, you say you implemented searching and sorting algorithms to list most relevant users. So I think that's really awesome. I would try to put some sort of metric here to say like, to load most relevant user on screen with X seconds, just so that you have some sort of numerics for your project. So one big thing about your resume is that you should probably include more numerics. So like increase things by X%, decreased time to load by 10 seconds or whatever. And I know it's a bit difficult sometimes when you just have personal projects. So I would try to see, this is a good point where you can actually list a numeric, because you're showing that you're using different sorting and searching algorithms. So I would try to find some sort of numeric to put in here. And this one over here, I think saying object-oriented programming principles is a bit vague. You might want to describe it in more detail, but it's honestly not a huge deal. I think it's fine if you just keep it short and simple as well. So it's just, if you think you have more to elaborate on, I would do that. And then here's another minor thing over here is about the TXT files. Personally, I would say either .txt or the full Word text files, because not all recruiters are technical. So it looks kind of like a typo as it is right now. But if you put .txt, you know it's an extension. If you put text files, you know it's like the word text. So it's just a very minor thing that I think you should add. And then finally, in extracurricular activities and leadership, I would put these dates in reverse chronological order. So right now you have it in your oldest one first, and then your most recent one at the bottom. I would put it the other way around. And I'd also make sure that your dates are formatted properly. So like this little dash here is not the same size as the dash over here. So just make sure that the formatting is consistent. And then for the developer student club, I would get rid of this thing here that says role, I would just put the role at the bottom. It's implied that that's your role. And for this mobile app developer, I would put the company on top as bold and your position underneath, so it stays consistent with your first bullet point. And then the last thing is you should be capitalizing your technologies properly. So React Native should be in capitals, Expo and MongoDB should be capitalized properly. And I also think that the final point as a mobile app developer is really, really good. And I think you should elaborate a lot more on this if you can. So I would personally put this maybe up on your resume, maybe right under education, because I think that this has a lot of potential to show that you have like real technical experience working for somebody doing development work. And I would try to elaborate on your points, like you developed a mobile app using React Native for what purpose? How did it help the company? What challenges did you face and how did you solve them? Like what was the problem and how are you solving it by creating this mobile app? So yeah, that's all I have for this. Overall, I think you have good content. I think that it just needs a bunch of, I guess, reformatting, but I think you have a lot of potential here to make this a really, really great resume. So good job.
I actually wanted to chime in on a few things I saw. For the dates, I say stay consistent, especially in your projects and experiences section. I know above you have it as a three-letter abbreviation, but then on the project and experiences section, you just have it as the full month name and italicized. So I think, as Jennifer said, you should probably move that to the right. And on the last, I believe it's the last experience in the extracurricular activity section, I'd say put July to just Jul, because it should be three-letter abbreviation. Aside from that, one thing I'd probably change is your last bullet point in your shopping website. You probably don't want anything hanging off on the very end. So just make it so it's one bullet point and not like one tiny word hanging off and making it two, because you have goals taking up an entire line, which can be used for something like the React Native work you did. Aside from that, I have nothing else to say. Does anyone want to chime in?
I have one more thing to add. For project experiences, try to keep them in the order of the chronological order. So it's April, December, and November. So yeah, I would like to see it in April, November, December, either that or December, November, April. So yeah, try to keep it in order.
Anyone else before we move on to Kajaban's resume? If not, then I guess we can move on.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So yeah, with this resume, like just this like as like a starting comment, I think like the format is pretty good. It actually looks a lot like my resume, so maybe I'm biased a little bit, but I do think it's ATS friendly, so that's good. I just had a couple of comments about things like content wise, so we can go over that stuff. Right. So yeah, so that's basically my first comment. It's good format. So yeah, Karan, we can start there. So just a small thing. I actually skipped looking at this top section when I started reviewing it. And then I came back and I was like, wait, I can't find this person's name. So I do think that if possible, if you have space, your name should be a little bit bigger. I know it's bolded out, but it does seem a little small compared to the other sections. So it's just a little nitpick. Again, it depends on if you have space to do this, but yeah. The next comment has to do with the LinkedIn link. So I know that with LinkedIn, if you have a common name, it will attach a hash to the end, kind of like what this person has here. You can actually life hack this and make this link shorter by basically in the hyperlink, you just remove this hash, and the real link has the hash, obviously, because that's how it gets to your page. But then when the recruiter looks at it, it's just going to be like linkedin.com/in/Kajobin Kuapren. So that's what I did because my LinkedIn profile actually has a hash as well, but I didn't think it was that aesthetically pleasing. So I just removed it on the hyperlink. Just a little thing to trim some space off. Scrolling down to the skills section. So here, I was just looking at all these different skills, and it seems like there's not, it's not very cohesive. I see like Java, Python, JavaScript, and then we have Arduino on the same line. And I'm not a hardware person, but I don't even think Arduino is a language. It's like the hardware, like microchip, right? So that shouldn't be there. And also it doesn't really match the theme here. Also, we see like on frameworks, or like frameworks and other tools.
Yeah,
We have
it uses
React.
like C.
Yeah. Oh, okay, true. But like for frameworks, we see React, and then we also have like Inventor and stuff like that on the next line. So I think like if you're applying for a SWE position, like software engineering position, knowing Inventor, knowing Fusion, this isn't stuff that I would personally want to include here, because it kind of dilutes what you're trying to like show here. And this comes from me who like I used to do like AutoCAD stuff, but I chose to remove all of that from my resume when I started applying for SWE positions because it's just not a requirement. Even though it's a cool skill to have, personally, it's just not relevant for the recruiter, and it dilutes everything else here. So I would go through this and filter this a little bit. I'm just assuming that you're applying for SWE positions here, which is why I'm saying this. But yeah, going down to experiences. This first experience, it starts in July, and the next one starts in August, like the one below it. So chronologically, it should actually be below this second position. And also on top of that, like it says, so all your other positions are like related to development, and then this first one is like coding instruction, which is good. Like it's good to show that you know how to teach how to code, because that's like important when you're a team member. But I do think when you are like searching for internship, the ability to code is more relevant. So I would definitely swap these first two positions. Firstly, because it's in like not in chronological order right now, but also because I think when the recruiter's scanning from top to bottom, they want to see that you have actual development experience first. So, yep, we have that. So, yes, so all the verbs. So I know I wrote imperative tense, but basically, whenever you write a resume bullet, if your first word is going to be a verb, which it should be, like developed, instructed, refactored, for example, they should all be in the same tense. So either pick if you want it to be in the imperative tense, like instruct, develop, like that. Use that throughout. Or if you want it to be in the past tense, if it's a past position, do that. But here it's a little bit inconsistent. Like for example, we have instruct, and then we have like preparing, which is like the current tense. And then like for example, for your older positions, it says like recreate and then developing, which is like present tense for like a position that happened before. So I would say just go through all these like first words and make sure they're all consistent in tense, preferably either imperative or past tense. So moving down to this next experience, the second one, on this first line, it says working in a team of 8. I don't think the team size is that relevant unless you are the team lead. So that's just my opinion. But also like at the end here, it says within 4 weeks. The timeline might not also be relevant either. Timeline maybe, because it shows that you can deliver something in a short amount of time, like just a month. But definitely the team size, I'm not sure if that's exactly relevant. Again, unless you were like leading these other 8 developers or so. And also on the same vein, on the second bullet, complete given task on Jira. It's kind of a given that if you're in SWE, you're going to be using some like project management tool like Jira or Asana. So I wouldn't waste space saying this, because I would just assume, yeah, like if you're doing agile, your PM is putting stuff on Jira, like, you know. So yeah, just a little thing there. Next thing too, so with this with this position, you did like development work, and you tried to quantify it by like saying how big your team is and stuff like that. But I would rather focus on things actually related to the implementation when you quantify. So for example, you're saying here that you integrate by given APIs. Is there like anything to say about this API that you hit? Like, how many hits do you make on this endpoint like every month? Are you like, is your app like making like millions of calls, or like um, anything just to quantify the actual implementation a bit more? And you would know best because you actually like worked on this, how to do this, but numbers are like key when it comes to these bullets. So I would try to focus on that. And on the same line, the second bullet, React Native is in capital here, but then in your skills, it's capital. So like you should make it consistent. So if it's going to be React Native capital, it should just be React Native capital everywhere. And that is the same for like any skill that you list on your resume. Yeah, that's it for the second position. For this third position, again, same thing. It's like inconsistent tense here. It says recreate on the first line, then like, which is imperative, and then developing on the second line, which is present. And then on top of that, this is a position that has already passed. So this should all be in past tense, like frankly. So I would fix that. And on the same vein with like quantifying, if you have any statistics about like this whole redesign of this old website, like did it become faster? Like maybe it used to load in 5 seconds, now it loads in 2 seconds. So that's like, I don't know, 60% increase in speed or something. So anything you can use to quantify would be helpful here. Because I'm going to talk about this later too, but it's like, why did the company want to redesign this website? Like, what did you achieve by redesigning it? Was it just, because I see here it says for like future functionality and backend integrations, but like, did you achieve anything else? Did the website become faster? You know, anything like that is just good to quantify here. But yeah, and then for this fourth position, it says communicate with assigned mentor over Slack. So in the same vein with like using Jira or anything, I would just assume if you're in SWE that you're going to use Slack or like Microsoft Teams or something to talk to your team members. So this isn't very profound or something that I think is like worth mentioning. And on that same line, it says like develop a frog species detection app. This sounds really cool, right? So instead of talking about how you talk to your mentor, which is like 60% of this line, why don't we talk about like, how did you code it? Like, what language was this? Is this like a Python thing? Did you use TensorFlow? Like, were you on the front end side or the back end side of this app? Like, there's a lot of question marks when it comes to this, but it sounds really cool, you know? And that's, if I was an interviewer, like this is something I would want to talk about, right? So I would definitely like refactor this line to talk more about like what you did, like what languages you used, what tools you used, anything like that, which is like on the implementation level. And like in general, like for all 4 of these positions, you should be using a bullet format that's like solved X problem using Y technology for reasons quantified by Z, right? So it's like you explain what you solved, and then you show what technology you used, and then again, like use numbers to like show the recruiter like the scale at which like what you did, you know? Like what if there's like millions of frog species that are detected by this app, you know? You don't mention that anywhere, but that would be like really profound and something to talk about, you know? So quantifying is important, and showing what tech you used is important too. I know on the next line you talk about, yeah, so exactly. See, so this is a good point. Like on this first bullet, I have a bunch of questions about like how you did this. And then on the second bullet, you explain that, but I'm already like, I already have so many questions from like the first bullet, right? So the second bullet should actually be at the top. We should talk about, you know, that you used Android Studio and Firebase, you know, and stuff like that. So this could be refactored because it is a cool position. And this goes for everything. Focus more on what you did like at the low level, like implementation wise, and less high level stuff like using Slack, using Jira. That's all like a given, to be honest. But like in general, these are all really cool positions. I did notice you're like basically only in second year, and the fact that you've done like 3 development experiences, um, is really, really great. So definitely like capitalize on that and talk more about what you actually did implementation wise, because a lot of people don't have 3 co-ops by the time they're in second year, at least people that, or resumes that I've seen. But yeah, scrolling down to extracurriculars, we have um, this whole line. So basically, it's like designed something and modeled it using Inventor. You can move all your verbs to the front. So the verb designed and the verb modeled, you just move it to the front. I think in general for resume bullets, like your verbs should be at the front. So just a small thing there. Uh, and then going to the second one with the FRC robotics team. So the second bullet, so we see here there's 4 bullets and they all start with verbs like achieved, responsible, manufactured. But then the second bullet doesn't start with a verb. So you should keep it consistent with all bullets in your experience and your extracurriculars. Start with a verb, right? And also on the same line, these first 2 bullets are basically saying the same thing. It's that you were very like you're a decorated team and that you guys won a lot while you were on the FRC team. So you could probably combine these 2 and just say like achieve second place at 2019 competition and top 8 in this other 2019 competition, because they're trying to say the same thing, that you guys won a lot, which is cool, right? But you don't need to give 2 bullets to that. You could all be said on 1 line. But yeah, that's it for that. Oh, sorry, no, there's one last thing I missed with the manufactured custom design brackets. So basically, this whole like thing with the FRC robotics team has like 4 bullets, but your above experiences, which are actually related to SWE, only have like 2 or 3 bullets. So I think in general with this resume, I'm getting the vibe that you're in second year, you don't have that much experience yet, but you're not. You're like you did a lot of like actual like mechanical design stuff. Like I see Inventor pop up a lot and like CNC router pop up a lot. But if you are applying for SWE positions, this stuff isn't really relevant anymore, which sucks because, like I said before, in high school I did a lot of this as well, and it really hurt to like have to rip all of this stuff out of my resume because being a part of this club for like 3 years is like a part of you, right? So it sucks to have to like drop that from your resume. But unfortunately, if you are applying for SWE, these skills aren't necessarily relevant anymore. But what I would say is that these experiences are still helpful. So what I would do is try to like, instead of focusing on like Inventor or CNC router, focus more on like the soft skills, like things that like if you were a team lead while you were on this robotics team, or like if you mentored like incoming people. I would rather take the shift away from Inventor and like stuff like that and focus more on the general things which can also apply to SWE positions. And then you can cut this down a bit from maybe from 4 bullets to like 2. So then you'll have more space to talk about your actual SWE stuff at the top of the resume. So just a little thing there. And finally, we're at the bottom. So with awards, yeah, so with that bullets, I see everywhere else that you do like month dot date as like the format, but then at the bottom here we just have, or sorry, month dot year as the format, but at the bottom we have just year. So I kind of get why you would want to do that, but for like aesthetics, you might want to include the month and just like keep the format the same. But that's just my opinion. So I don't like think this is just a small nitpick, but I would try to keep everything consistent in terms of like the date format. And then going to like this first line of the winner of DeltaHacks, you say you created a recycle reward app and you won out of 195 projects, but like this first line doesn't say what this project does, but then the second line does. So I think like what the project does is really important. So I would try and like move this end part of the second line, which is like misrecycled and redeem rewards, and put that at the top. So like create a recycle reward app with Flutter and Firebase that alerts users when item is misrecycled and allows them to redeem rewards, you know? Because it doesn't, the first line doesn't tell me what this does. And then like you're kind of forcing me to have to read all the way to the end of the second line in order to like get context, which, you know, for a recruiter, sometimes they're only going to read the first line, frankly, you know, while they skim. So you want to give them as much information, like front load all the information you can. And then also I see that you mentioned Flutter twice, so it's kind of redundant. I assume that you're going to use Flutter for all components of this app. So, you know. But yeah, so next one, winner of DeltaHacks 7. Congratulations. That's really cool. You know, shout out DeltaHacks. Like what category did you win for? Because I like, you know, for hackathons, you have so many different awards. Like, did you win like top 3, or did you win for like a specific like challenge or something? Might be something relevant. Even for the previous like award, it might be something relevant to mention in the title. But yeah, like, you know, same thing, designed an automatic pill dispenser. Like, are there any other features of this app that are relevant? It would be good to mention on the first line. And then coming to the end here, we have gold medalist in the Halton Skills Robotics Competition. Robotics competition should be capital. I'm assuming that this like this competition is called the Halton Skills Robotics Competition. So like the title of anything like a pronoun should be, or a proper noun, sorry, should be capitalized. So just a small nitpick there. And finally, tools to manufacture a teleop robot. I don't know what a teleop robot is, and neither would a recruiter. So in general, you shouldn't use any specific jargon that a recruiter wouldn't understand when you talk about anything. So like you could probably generalize this, like instead of saying teleop robot, like just robot, or like use a more general word just to give a little bit more context. You're just trying to like minimize the misunderstanding that could happen between you sending this to a recruiter and then the recruiter reading it. So no specific jargon. That's a no-no. But yeah. So overall, like I said, it's a really good format. It's really impressive that you have like 3 developer experiences already in your second year. Just focus more on the content implementation wise, because that's what's gonna help you stand out. But yeah, that's it for me. I don't know if any other roasters have anything else to mention.
Anyone else?
One thing with form.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so just quick thing with the date formatting. I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but for example, that first date is slightly off. Like it's not right centered, I guess. So something I would do is definitely move all those dates so that they're in line to the right, including the awards section, having those dates lined up on the right side. That's all I wanted to add. Go ahead, Anand.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring back the attention to LinkedIn. So Kajiman said that he has had this LinkedIn link and he just hyperlinked it. So sometimes what happens is recruiters will see your resume and they'll type it in. So that might not work out. But LinkedIn has a feature where you can kind of claim a brand or claim a link. So you can just customize that URL for yourself. It needs to be unique, obviously. And once you have that, you can just like slap it on your resume. So you know, just do your first name dash last name and see if that's available. If that's available, that I think that works. That's what I've done. Yeah. So that would be easier for the recruiter if they want to type it in, because this will not work out if they want to type it in.
Okay, great advice. Anything else before we get on to the Q&A section? If not, my first question would be, how did you guys land your current internships or your previous internships? And can you share your story and the process that you took to get there? So like a little bit of a backstory. So I guess we'll go in order of introductions again. So can Raheel, do you wanna share your experience?
Yeah, design has been something I've always loved to do ever since I was a little kid. When I was a kid, I tried to design my own Pokemon game one time, making the sprites, and I used an IDE and stuff. And I also tried to design the interior of cars and stuff. So design that was just something I always wanted to do. And so over the years, I built my portfolio, and then I obviously got into programming and computer science. So that's why I chose computer science in uni. And it was a great mix of both design and programming in product design. So it was the perfect position for me, and that's what I wanted to do. So over the years, like I built my portfolio, and that played a huge part in my applications. And it just showed, like, whenever you're applying for stuff and you're interviewing, you have to be passionate for what you're doing, and just show that you really want to make a difference at the company, and you're going to be the perfect fit for the company and its mission as well. So when I applied just normally through the application portal. Um, I got this for design. It's kind of different. Sometimes you get take-home assignments. You have to do those, and then after you submit those, you get invited to a recruiter screen or whatnot. So it, and then after that, you have like a couple of rounds of final interviews, and then you get the offer. So I think more than anything, just show you're passionate through whatever personal website or projects you create. Connect with people. Networking is extremely important, and that really helps in the long run. Stay in touch with recruiters, because I'll tell you, for Facebook, I didn't apply. A recruiter reached out to me, and it was because I kept in touch with recruiters, have coffee chats with them or whatnot, and just maintain good relationships with them, and that goes a long way. So my 2 cents: just keep good connections, network, and keep good relationships with people, because it can go a long way.
I'm actually glad you brought up the networking side, because we actually have a question. How do you actually start to network?
Yeah, there's like a million different ways you can. Just a couple of them is like to join clubs. Join clubs, you'll meet people, you'll meet some awesome people, and you'll build good relationships with them. It's obviously harder when it's when it's online, but do that. Reach out on LinkedIn with people in your industry. Ask them for a coffee chat. Ask them for just a small chat, or just ask them questions on LinkedIn, and then try to keep in touch with them. Go to career fairs, go to job fairs. Mcmaster has a bunch of events. But yeah, if anyone else has any other advice with networking, there's just so many ways you can do it.
So I guess honestly, my question might be, how do you keep up with like over the coffee chat? Like, what would it be that you ask or keep up that makes the relationship last?
Just like I said, just show your passion, and just just show that you're really passionate about what you do, and you're really interested in the company. Keep them updated what's going on in your life. How are things going, whether it's on the work side or the side projects or just life in general. They like do the same thing, and you don't have to like communicate with them so often, but just occasionally reach out to them, just keep updated, and the relationship, just keep it healthy. I think that's what really matters. But anyone else with any other advice on networking, feel free to add.
Yeah, I guess if anyone can chime in on how they started to network with their connections early on.
Yeah, so I could add a couple notes to that, but I would say the hardest part with networking is that people feel like it has to be a constant type of communication, but that's definitely not the case. You don't have to be best friends with your recruiter. You honestly don't even have to reach out to them that frequently. Just get your name out there, maybe set up a quick coffee chat so they at least know your name. And then you just have to reach out, I would say every 6 months is like more than enough, just with a quick message like, hey, how are you doing? Here's my update. If you're looking out for like roles or something, just sending them a quick message. Hey, like I saw this role and I'm very interested. As long as they have your name and like previous emails or messages, then that's been good enough in my experience for networking. to get started with networking, the biggest thing for me honestly was hackathons. So DeltaHacks and other hackathons, I was able to speak with sponsors directly and get my name there and connect with them on LinkedIn to continue our conversation. So that was the biggest for me in terms of networking. And then also just even cold messaging. So on LinkedIn is a big one. Through email, if you have your recruiter's email, is also useful. So yeah, in terms of networking, just getting your name out there, first of all, and then keeping up, I would say, every 6 months or so. You don't have to message them every single month, I would say.
Okay, this is definitely
Yeah.
valuable info. Oh,
I'd like
sorry.
to add to that. So, sorry, yeah. What Rahul said and what Michelle said is like very important. So networking is very important, right? So my first internship I got via DeltaHacks. So I started in the executive team for DeltaHacks 5, and I went to CIBC's booth. I gave them my resume, and I just spoke with the recruiters. So from that, I got two interviews from CIBC for two different roles, and I was in second year at that time. So fortunately, I just got the position. So from that, I from that 4-month position that turned into an 8-month position that turned into a 12-month position. I spent 12 months at CIBC, and during that time, I was talking with other recruiters and getting my name out. So for the next internship, a recruiter from RBC reached out to me. They said, "Hey, you have relevant experience. We want to, interview you for our team." So I did not even apply. I just got a message from the recruiter, and then I got that position. So that's how I worked at RBC. So it all started for me. It started from DeltaHacks. So that's why I think going to hackathons and getting to know recruiters, getting recruiters to know you, that's very important. And just one more thing I want to add, that when you do interviews, you are bound to fail. So like failure is a part of the process. So don't get disheartened if you fail those interviews. It's going to happen, and you just have to learn from them and keep moving forward. So yeah.
How did those who did have interviews, how did you guys prepare? Did you like personally practice with a friend, like rehearse? Not sure.
So for me, it's been very clear that now it's very clear to me that there are two parts to the interview. The first part is getting that interview, and for that, it's all soft skills. It's all talking to the recruiter, getting your name out, polishing a resume that we just did, resume roast, and getting it cleaned up so you get noticed and you get to the stage where you actually get interviewed, the technical interview. And then the technical interview part is like knowing your stuff, what you've mentioned on your resume. You should know a bit of technology. If you're in second year or above, you should know basics of data structures and algorithms. That's very important. And you should have some practice on technical questions. So doing mocks with friends helps out a lot. I did a lot of mocks with my friends, and a lot of people online will also do mocks with you. So how that works is you do 30 to 45 minutes, you answer the question, and then 30 to 45 minutes you take their interview and they'll answer your question. So practice is very important, and practice is key. So first you need to get to that level where you start getting those interviews. So polish your resume, make sure your networking skills are top notch, and then when you do get those interviews, just practice for them and then ace that. That's how you get a job.
Okay, sweet. This is good to know. I guess, Jason, do you want to talk about your experience and your backstory and how you sort of got started?
Sure. So I came into CS having never really programmed before. So first year was like a huge struggle for me. I definitely like almost failed some of my classes, and like I remember by the end of first year, I couldn't understand what a for loop was. Like it didn't make any sense to me. Like it was just a new way of thinking. But I spent that first summer after first year doing a lot of personal projects and just random online courses on like Udemy, and just trying to just figure out kind of like how everything works and comes together. So then when I went into second year, I was more confident. And in second year, I started applying. I applied to a lot of companies just in Canada and the US. And I got a couple of interviews, one of them being with IBM. And so the IBM one, that one started off with like an online test. And then once you get past that, it was just, I had like an on-site, which was I think 2 hours, where they asked a mix of technical and behavioral questions. Honestly, it was pretty easy, I would say, even looking back at it. And so that's how I got that position. And then for my position at Salesforce, so that one I just applied online. And I just heard back after a couple of weeks, and we did a hacker rank, which is an online coding challenge. And after the hacker rank, I got an email for an interview. So initially there was one behavioral interview. It was with the recruiter, where they just asked you, why do you want to work at Salesforce? What can you bring to the table? That sort of thing. And then after that, it was an hour-long technical interview where, again, coding questions similar to what you would find on like LeetCode. So then after that interview, I didn't hear back. So then I reached out to my recruiter about 1 or 2 weeks later. And so she told me that like that team decided to go with a different candidate, but there was this other team who was interested in interviewing me. So she asked if I was interested in, networking with them. So I was like, sure. And then from that point, I did another technical interview and then another interview after that with the hiring manager. And then so I got that position. So I think what I learned from that second experience was like, definitely reach out to your recruiters if you don't hear back after an interview, because I'm sure if I didn't like reach out and ask for an update, like, I don't think I would have gotten that second chance at going to Salesforce. But yeah, it's definitely just a numbers game. Try to apply to as many places as you can, network. LeetCode is your best friend. Do a lot of LeetCode. Ramp is another good resource. I use that quite a bit. It's basically an online resource where you get paired up with random people around the world and you guys do a mock interview. But yeah.
Okay, sweet. I'm glad you actually answered one of their questions. So for anyone else who hasn't answered, the question is, how has your experience with coding interviews been? So I think I can ask, I guess, Michelle, because you just landed an internship at Tesla. So how did that look like for you?
Yeah, so my coding interviews have varied a lot between different companies that I've applied for. So for example, with IBM, I found they were a lot more technical than, let's say, like Microsoft was, but Tesla, for example, was also highly technical. So my experience with coding interviews, I would say have been so-so. They've been good as long as you prep for them. So when it comes to doing LeetCode questions, I find for internships, it might be different for full-time. I don't know if anyone wants to note that after, but at least for internships, I know that companies love LeetCode questions and those type of programming questions. So honestly, the experience with coding interviews have been pretty good for me. As long as you're explaining your thought process, the recruiters will often at least nudge you in the right direction if you're falling off the path a little bit. But as long as you have your base knowledge, you understand the question, and you have an idea of how to solve it, and you talk it through, and then you go about and you can implement it, then I would say it's good. So that's been my experience. I don't know if anyone else has anything to note.
Jennifer, would you like to chime in? I know you've worked at, I think, Morgan Stanley and IBM before.
Yeah, I think I agree. A lot of your questions are going to be LeetCode-y, so algorithms, so like know your sorting algorithms, your graph algorithms, trees, stuff like that. And one thing is that some companies will also ask you system design questions. So something like, let's say they give you a scenario and then they ask you to design some sort of app to solve their problem. So like an example of something I was asked was, if you have a group of developers who are experiencing long latency at certain times of day, how can you create an app that will track this and report to the appropriate team so that we can get these developers to have better latencies at that time? So like, it's like a question where it's like a real life scenario, and they want you to design some sort of app to help them. So like it's not always going to be algorithms, but you will find a lot of algorithm questions in your interviews. And also one important thing that Michelle mentioned is that explaining your thought process is really important, because if you are silent, your recruiter doesn't know if you're thinking or if you are stuck on the question. So make sure everything you say, just be like, okay, I'm gonna write a for loop here to do X, Y, Z, and then my next step will be putting this into the array, blah, blah, blah. So make sure you say every step of the way. And if you are confused, say that you are a bit lost here, and they might give you some tips to proceed, because your interviewer has already spent so much time on you. They want you to succeed. They want to hire you. They're not trying to make you fail. They're just trying to make sure that you are a good fit.
Jennifer made a really good point about recruiters. They want to help you, so they want to help you. They're your best friend and they want you to succeed, and they really want you to, you know, get the job. So really leverage your communication with them, and like she said, like they really want to help you succeed and get the job. So keep that in mind.
Okay, sweet. Question for Rahel. How did your interviews look like for designing? Because I know, obviously, I'm not sure if this is true, but you were not asked any coding questions. So how did it look like?
Yeah, product design interviews typically consist of a portfolio review where you have 3 or 4 product managers and designers just listening to the presentation that you give about your past projects and work, or it can be an interview about you walking through your portfolio website or whatever it may be. So that's typically a constant throughout all product design interviews. And some companies have app critiques where you and the interviewer select an app that you're going to critique together, and you go through and they basically test your product thinking as you go through the app and critique it, basically visual design, business needs, visual hierarchy, whatever it may be. And like I said before, they typically also have take-home assignments in the initial stages. So it really depends on the company, but the portfolio review is really a constant throughout.
Okay, sweet. And I guess, Kajaban, can you talk about your interview at Sense and how that sort of looked like?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess like even before that, like how I even found out about Essence, because like it's not your traditional tech company. Like I said, they sell luxury clothing. It's kind of split 50-50 between their e-commerce and their like luxury clothing side. Um, so like I actually found this through LinkedIn. So I would highly recommend like anyone looking for co-op or for new grad. LinkedIn has been like vital for me throughout like undergrad. So I'm like a +1 for always keeping your profile up to date and like turning on email notifications for like jobs. So that way you'll be like the first one to see if a company you like post a job that's relevant. But yeah, in terms of Essence, how did it go? It started with, so actually like I found out about Essence and I found their job posting. And then I noticed that they were also doing like an open house for all like potential interns and new grads to their tech department. So I actually went to this open house and got to talk. It was like through Zoom, like talk to some of the recruiters, you know, see what's going on. And it was around the same time that I found out that Essence actually has a tech blog. So they actually post like a lot of technical articles that are like actually very highly technical in nature. I didn't expect that to come from like a clothing company, but it was actually a really good indicator that they're actually writing like good code and solving like highly technical challenges at this company. So I think like, and just another side like anecdotal thing, like when you see a company that you like, doing research into it is like really really important, because one, it lets you know if you would actually enjoy working at this company, but also that knowledge will come clutch later on in the interview process. Because like my research on Essence, like the blogs I read that other engineers had written, definitely did come up later on in the interview. Like literally every single interview, every person I met from Essence, I was like, yeah, I read this blog, I read your blog, like stuff like that. But yeah, like, so I went to this open house, like read the blog, and I was like really hyped. Um, and I was like waiting to get like call back, I guess, or like an email back to set up an interview. And what I actually did is I went on LinkedIn and I messaged like 15 recruiters from Essence, and I was like, I'm in love with your company. Like, I want to work here so bad. I don't know if this helped me. I'm gonna be honest. Like, only like 3 or 4 recruiters actually messaged me back, and they're like, okay, like, good luck, whatever. One of them was like, I'm gonna cross my fingers for you, and I was like, okay, thank you. That's very helpful. But maybe that helped me, maybe it didn't, but definitely I think this comes in the same vein as like networking, like try to reach out to people who, recruiters or like engineers that work at the company that you are interested in because it could potentially help. But yeah, so then, they called me in for an interview after. The first one was just like, so it was actually a virtual, like a video interview, but it's like, um, you're recording your answers. So like it's not like how do I say it? Like they give you like questions, like prompts, and then you have to like answer like 3 or 4 questions. It wasn't technical at all. It was pretty much like about your soft skills and like your like extracurriculars and like why you want to work at this company and stuff like that. So that was the first part of the interview, and then I also had a hacker rank, which is it's like LeetCode, but it's like it's just like for interview questions. So they sent me HackerRank. It was like 4 questions to do in like an hour. So I did that. And I think both of these assessments came at the same time, actually, like this virtual interview and the HackerRank. And then, yeah, like I guess I passed the HackerRank. So they like set up a call with the engineering manager. So this engineering manager that I interviewed with is actually my like boss now. So I was like, I think for like this, I've never like experienced that before, like actually talking to the person who's ended up going to be your manager. But I got to chat with him. So it was an hour-long interview. The first part was like a soft skills kind of interview with like this engineering manager talking about like my experiences. DeltaHacks came up like so much in that interview. So definitely being involved in extracurriculars in undergrad helps a lot because it shows that you're like well-rounded and it's not only you knowing how to code, like you know how to work with people and stuff like that. And then the second part was like with a senior engineer, and that was like more systems design. So I don't think like internships are gonna ask you like systems design questions. I think they care more about if you actually know how to code like on the low level. At least personally, I've never had a systems design interview for an internship, but since this was full time, they did ask me like some like honestly I kind of forgot, but it was like high level like systems design questions like we have this like for example at Essence we have this problem, like how would you design the system to like solve it, whatever. So that was another 30 minutes. So hour-long interview there, and then wait around a bit, reach out back to your recruiter, thank them for the interview, stuff like that, and then came back with the offer. So they definitely like asked like if I know how to code. They cared a lot about the soft skills. They cared a lot about the systems design. So definitely, if you are preparing for new grad positions, LeetCode is your friend. I use LeetCode a lot, but also I'll go on YouTube and watch like some systems designs videos. There's a lot of good channels that basically like for an hour they'll like solve a system design question and talk about that. Um, Even watching 2 or 3 of those videos could be very helpful if it ever comes up. But yeah, that was my experience.
Okay, I guess this is also great to hear. I guess before we do wrap up, I just wanted to ask, did you guys use any external, I guess, job application portal aside from like the company's portal? Like how often did you use LinkedIn? Did you use, I don't know, Glassdoor, Oscar Plus, even perhaps? So like the university's job posting site.
I guess
I
I can
guess,
go because I was
yeah.
just talking about LinkedIn. But I used LinkedIn. So in second year, when I started applying for internships, I used Oscar Plus a lot. And I didn't use anything else. And I would highly advise not doing that. I think you should use all the portals that you can possibly use. But like as I progressed like through undergrad, I started moving away from Oscar Plus and more towards like LinkedIn. I know like there's other ones like Glassdoor and Indeed, but personally, um, I just like use LinkedIn a lot. I feel like the postings go up there. Um, like when a company makes a posting on their website, it will like likely go up on like LinkedIn almost immediately if the company has like a LinkedIn page. So yeah, like LinkedIn is big. The only thing about Oscar Plus is I know like it's good because the school has like connection with the recruiters and stuff like that, but like not all the postings are going to be on Oscar Plus. Not all the companies post there. But a vast majority of the companies will post to LinkedIn or Glassdoor. So if you just look at Oscar Plus, because that's what Mcmaster uses, you're limiting yourself like to like a very small subset of companies. So that's just my opinion.
Anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just say, as Kajun mentioned, I was also just using LinkedIn, and in my second year, I was kind of limited to Oscar Plus. I was just looking at Oscar Plus, did not know how to network really and get my foot in the door. But as I started going to hackathons and seeing like how people network, I learned from them, and then I started talking to recruiters on LinkedIn in person. I also applied on company's website. So getting your foot in the door is more important. Does not matter how you do it. Cold emails also work. Talking to recruiters also work. But just don't like stick to like applying online and hope that works, because the the return rate of like your chances of getting interviews versus the number of applications you make is like relatively low. It's been very low for me up until now. I can't say for other people. So yeah, just applying online daily does not work out. You have to like get your foot in the door, one way or the other.
Okay. I guess I'm gonna ask one more person to chime in if possible before we slowly wrap up. Jennifer, did you use LinkedIn or any other external application other than, I guess, Oscar Plus, like perhaps Indeed or Glassdoor? And how did you use it?
Yeah, so for my first internship, which was IBM, I pretty much just, or I guess my first internship when I was in second year, I only applied to places that are either an Oscar Plus or things that my friends were applying to, which I think was very limiting. I definitely think there's so many good resources online that give you links to places to apply. So if you, for example, if you search up like 2022 summer internships GitHub, you'll find a repo that has links to a bunch of summer 2022 internships to apply online. And it's not like talking to a recruiter or anything, but it's really helpful to, like just go through the entire list and apply to as many of them as you can. Keep in mind that they are generally US companies, so you might have a pretty low success rate because a lot of, I'm not sure if the visa ban is still in place for internships, but it's a bit difficult to get a sponsorship as a Canadian. But in any case, if you just search it up, if you search up like Canadian internships 2022 GitHub, you'll find like a GitHub repo that has a ton of links for you to apply. So I think that's something you can do. And yeah, just leverage all the resources you have by like Googling these links, and just because like these are all community based and people, like if they find a posting, they'll put it on there for you, so you don't have to do too much of the research work yourself. So I think that's something you should do. And I also think LinkedIn's really useful as well. I don't know if I've ever gotten any hits from LinkedIn, but I think LinkedIn has one of the better, I guess, things. Like it's easier for you to find relevant positions than like Indeed or Glassdoor. Like I have Glassdoor recommend me senior positions, which is not what I am. But LinkedIn is quite good at recommending things that are for your skill level. So if you're running out of places to apply, I think LinkedIn is a very good place to look for other companies that you might have not heard of before.
Okay, awesome. I guess just a quick question for you then. Should you include non-technical part-time jobs on your resume is a question we just got. I guess you can answer that, Jennifer, or anyone else can chime in.
I think yes, depending on whether or not you have space. So if you have space, then it's always good to put whatever experience you have, whether it's technical or not. But if you have, let's say, like a personal project and you'd be sacrificing this personal project for this non-technical part-time job, it's not that important.
I would agree. I guess I think just one final question, unless anyone else has any more. has anyone ever negotiated an offer that they've received, either in the past or for the future that they have? Going once, going twice.
I'll answer that. For
Okay.
for internship, it's usually not highly recommended to negotiate an offer unless and until you have like a lot of competing offers. So let's say you have offers from 3 big companies, or like you have similar pay, then you can go ahead and negotiate. It's a risky business. Mcmaster, the ECCS office does not recommend doing that. For full time, it's definitely recommended to negotiate because that's where you're going to end up, working for at least a year or so or more, depending on what your plans are. So I did negotiate for my full time offer, did not negotiate for my internship offer, and I think that's the way people should do it. Like if you have competing offers, by all means negotiate, but it's a very sensitive game because recruiters will not take back your offer if you negotiate. But as I said, it's a little risky because you can strain the relationship with your recruiter if you negotiate too much, if you push them too hard, and maintaining that relationship is very important.
Okay, I guess if nobody else has any more questions, that will be the end of this year's Resume Roast event. Okay, I'll stop the recording here. Thank you everyone who showed up. The recording will be sent to you via email as well as the presentation. And yeah, enjoy your day.